Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Game Dev London podcast. I'm your host for today. My name is Roxanne Marshall. You can refer to me as she, her. Talking about something very important today, which is accessibility in gaming, what exactly that means, who's doing it right, who's not doing a very good job of it, and what we can do as an industry to be better when it comes to prioritizing accessibility. I'm joined by a special guest today, and I will pass over to you to introduce yourself briefly.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elisabeth, but I am better known online under my game tag Orevia. I'm a disabled and chronically ill content creator from Norway, and I have been an accessibility advocate for at least around like 2 years now. I make content about accessibility on YouTube and Twitch and TikTok and wherever you find a social media. And yeah, I love talking about accessibility and want gaming to be for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today. So, I think let's get straight into it. And I will ask you what you think accessibility when it comes to gaming means, very high level.
Very high level, I think like it's easy enough if there is a barrier, you either have to give the player a way to get over it or a way to take it away. And it's like it's as simple as that. Accessibility is just to any product or anything you have a bunch of barrier, and it's normal. A game is full of barrier. We are supposed to go from A to B, and we are supposed to like do a lot of puzzles, or in a way have to have barriers to come there. But then you have to see, okay, but these barriers important? Do we need to have them? And if we do need to have them, if people cannot go past them, is there a way we can help them go past them? Easy enough.
Right. And I think when a lot of people think about accessibility, not just in gaming, but in any form, whether that's accessibility getting into a venue or watching a TV show, a lot of people immediately think about very obviously physical disabilities, maybe, blindness and deafness. But with gaming, I think it's really important that we also think about cognitive disability and accessibility for people with who are neurodivergent, and all of that comes under the barrier. Like you said, there are barriers for all types of people, um,
Yes.
and the more we do to let these specific people in all of their intersections play games, it's better for everyone.
Yes, 100%. We have something called the curb cut or cut curb effect or curb cut effect, but it's like when you walk out and you have a pavement or sidewalk, whether you prefer to call it, and you have like these like cuttings so that people in wheelchair can get down. And those are made, of course, for people in wheelchair to be able to get on and get off the pavement without having to like do that little jump that can hurt the body. But we all use them. Like if I am bicycle, I do not like to do that little jumps. I do that. I just use that little curve. Yeah, that little cutout of the curb. Or if you are on skateboard, or if you have like a stroller, or if you are delivering some goods or whatever, or you have a suitcase, we all use it. So what accessibility just is that if you think about those who need it the most, you will be able to accommodate and be accessible for a plethora of people you have
Mm.
never thought about before, which sort of makes it so that you are helping somebody who really needs it, but then you're also making the game more comfortable for people might not need it, but it would just be more comfortable using it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't really think much about that until a good friend of mine, Stacey of Gotham, I think they go by Here Lies Stacey now, briefly before they were working full time in the industry and accessibility, they were making videos about cognitive accessibility in games specifically. And I watched a couple, and I am someone who, I don't consider myself to have a disability, but I was like, all these things make my experience great. Also, turning
Yes.
off shakes, and I find that really overwhelming. Um, Things like coming back and having hints to remind me where I am. I play like 6 games at a time. I need a bit of a reminder. And
Yes.
yeah, I think that's kind of when I started looking into a bit more about accessibility helps very specific people, but it also helps us all, and that's super important.
Yeah, Stacey has been really good at championing for cognitive disability. We have 5 types of like accessibility. We have vision accessibility, visual accessibility for people who have problem with their eyes or can't see or are blind or for some reason. And then we have audio accessibility, which is for people who can't hear or have problem processing information through light sound. Then we have motor accessibility, which is just you have some problem with your arms or the way you interact with your motor skills towards the games. Then you have cognitive disability. And then I think we have the thing that we never talk about, which is speech accessibility or communication accessibility, because it is so small, but in a lot of games, it has a lot to say. It's hard to play a game where you need to talk to people if you do not have the ability to speak. And then we can do other accessibility, like we have pre-made like chat things you can say. I thought it was Rocket League, and I thought it was really, really cool. You
Mm.
can like
Yeah.
you can pre-make a lot of what you want to say to the team or the other team in a way where you can have it actually pre-made them, so you can have them sound like yourself, which is really, really cool, because a lot of the standards ones are maybe not how we want to speak as a human, or it doesn't like reflect on your personality, and in there you could like change them and edit them, and that is really, really cool. So there's 5 ways, and I think speech and cognitive are the two who are often forgotten, but they
Mm.
are often the ones who a lot of us, or at least the cognitive, a lot of us has experienced. I myself has cerebral palsy, and sometimes just having a lot of inputs just affects me. I just
Mm.
sometimes can't deal with a lot of sensory overload. But that isn't something you have to have a disability to experience. If you have had a long day at work, or you're just tired, or you're in a stressful situation, or your life is just hard, that is enough for you to need maybe a bit of like relaxing in game by, as you say, take off like shaking off the screen, or maybe you just aren't in the mindset, so it's hard for you to understand when they talk. I saw Laura K. Buss, a brilliant YouTuber, talked about how when two characters talks, and if you're not paying attention, it can sometimes, or if you're autistic, it can sometimes be hard to understand what are the conversation actually about, if they're being sarcastic or if they're saying something but meaning something else. And it could be really cool ways of like, can you then indicate in some way on screen that, okay, this was sarcasm, or
Mm.
she said that, or when she did like a facial expression, this is what she actually meant. Because things like that can be hard for a lot of people to see and understand. And yeah, it's a really cool way, especially if it's an important part of your game, to just take it with you and like, okay, but then you make sure your audience know what you want to rely. In
Mm.
the end, that's all it's about. You have a vision for your game, and you want as many people as possible understanding your vision and what you thought about for your game.
Mm. I really like the point you made about it being important to the game. And I think we will go into a bit about how devs can do better. But I think that's a really great way to look at it, because I get it can be probably quite overwhelming as a dev to be like, wow, there's a lot of different people who we would like to target. And that means there's lots of features that we need to add, which should definitely be a priority. But, that's just not the way it works right
No,
now in most
it's not.
cases. Um, but your point about if it's important to the game, then it should be something that you focused on with features for accessibility,
Yes.
because otherwise people are not getting the key points or maybe the USP of the game you're making.
Yes, and I think this sort of rolls into the long-standing discussion of should Souls-likes game have easy mode? And it is like, I think every time I'm somewhere and somebody asks me that question, is like, well, in a ideal world, I would like to have easy mode on games like that, but easy mode isn't end all be all. And I think, if I'm not sure right now, but I think From Software has said that they are not interested in it at all. And then that should be respected. But there is still a lot of things you can do outside of easy mode that can be just as helpful, if not even more, and still being able to keep the value that the devs want to have about the game. If you have like a pillar of your game being this should be difficult, and there is no way to not fix this without like going head first into the fight, like that is the only way you are supposed to play this game, well, okay, then that is a barrier you want to keep, and I think that is okay. I wish, as I said, in an ideal world that everything is accessible for everyone, but we know that no games, even games that has been like really good at accessibility, like Last of Us and God of War Ragnarok, those aren't accessible for everyone. We
Mm.
will never see that. No game can be 100% accessible. And then it's just like, okay, but what are your pillars? And is there any pillars we can take away? Or do we want a way to like get people to be able to still do what they want, but not taking away your pillar or your values of your game? And I think it is important. And I think also it's easier to meet, like for me, who is an accessibility advocate, I want to meet devs and the audience or the people playing the game in the middle. Like it isn't, we don't go anywhere if you go in screaming, you have to do this, you have to add this. Like nobody gets motivated if that's what they meet. It's a lot more fun thinking about, okay, this is what the experience I want my players to have. Okay, how can I be creative to solve this if, say, they can't see the game or they can't hear the game or they don't have their problem processing cognitive information a game is giving? So, yeah.
How do you think devs can have those conversations with people like you, with the player base, to kind of make sure they're hitting, like you said, maybe not everything that's possibly going to be asked of by players because that's just not possible, but how can we come to that middle ground of having that open channel of communication with devs?
I think it is a bit important for the devs first and all figuring out what they want with their game. We always say that accessibility should start like before, like in the start of your game, like because it's so much easier to have everything made and do it like cheapest as possible, which is important to think about because it is expensive making a game. And if you think about accessibility from the start, you are able to put it in when it's easier to do it. And like this, you can do design choice that makes it easier to be accessible. But in that like early stage, you also have to think, what do I want the players to have an experience about so that you are sure about this is what my game is supposed to be. If like difficulty is a thing that is important for you, that you're like, say, Dark Souls or Elden Ring, that is a value you have and that is what you want. If you are making a game where audio is the only way you want to rely something, maybe then this game isn't for somebody who is deaf. Or you have to think, do then I want to be accessible? And when you have figured out that yes, these are the values I want to, these are the values, these are the things I do not want to change, you have to ask. There is a saying in the disability space which is called nothing about us without us. And it's the reason for we saying that is that it's really hard to think what somebody needs without actually asking those who need it. Think about it sort of like the blinders a horse have when they do like the races. Everybody has those blinders. Even I'm an accessibility advocate, but I only know the world through my own illness and my own disabilities. If I want, like, say, know more about vision accessibility or audio accessibility, I have to ask somebody who has problem with that, who meets those barriers, because they will 10 out of 10 times know so much better than I do. So
Mm.
ask your community. If you have already a community, ask them. If you don't have a community, there is like Twitter, X, Reddit places or Discord. You can go and ask a bunch of people, like communities, like there are disability gamers is a Reddit. You can ask people, hey, can I get some input? And then when it comes a bit further along, playtest, because then you get the actual people who need to understand this to try it out. There is often we see that games are really, really nice and try to be accessible, but since they haven't talked to any of us, they have missed the target. But if they then get somebody to play test the game, then they get to know that and how to fix it. It's really obvious once you see somebody play a game struggling with it, what changes you can do. But it's really hard to like just imagine if this is a barrier or not. So talk to us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point about, bringing in the community and whether it's playtesting or just asking questions. And, the gaming industry is a creative industry at the end of the day. So even though today we don't have all the answers to getting rid of these barriers, or we do, but like you said, it's not cost effective. It makes the game too big, or whatever that is. But we will continue to grow the more we have these conversations, the more we include the people who we are trying to make these solves for. And it will get better because we're a tech industry, we're a creative industry. We will work it out. We will work
Oh
out all
yeah.
these things eventually.
Oh yeah, and we see that the fun thing is that we see more and more disabled people are starting to be in the field themselves. And we starting to get resources like I think it's Game Accessibility Guidelines. It's a brilliant resource, gameaccessibilityguideline.com. And you can just go in there and you have like easy things to add to your game, intermediate things to add to your game, and hard things to add to your game. And then they are divided into the 5 different categories of accessibility. And then you can just go in there and say like, okay, I know this game has an audio. We need to have, you are reliant on audio to be able to play this game, but I want to give people a way to go around that barrier. Then you can go in, like sort it out of audio accessibility, and then just see what other games have. They have a lot of tips, like what have other games done, what went well, what did not went well, and then you can just see what other games have done. So you don't need to figure it out yourself. There is a lot of resources out there. There's sadly we don't have in TV and film and stuff, we have a lot of industry standards. We do not have that in accessibility. So it is nice to just check on, like, say, if you want to do subtitling or a closed caption, just check what is other have done good and what other have done bad, because we have seen like games adding text, but they have so much text like in the caption on the screen that it's unreadable, or it doesn't work for people because you need to like move your head too much because they have put it too far out to the edges. Small things like that is really hard to know, but the game accessibility guidelines have that as an example, and you can see it, and then you can just, yeah, you don't need to sit there and learn everything by yourself. There are resources out there.
Yeah, and I think you can still try things yourself as well, a bit of trial and
Yeah.
error. And
Yeah.
like you said about text, I was reading, was it Return to Monkey Island, where they had different colors text for different characters, so you could tell who was talking. But then the colors they used meant that a lot of people with certain color blindness then couldn't read it at all. So
Yes.
we need to try these things and test them out. And at the end of the day, some things that we change will mean it makes it better for one person and maybe worse for someone else.
Yeah.
But the more we try, the better we're going to get. These guidelines are going to be bigger and bigger. We're going to have more steer, especially for like indies as well, who don't have the big resource to have guidelines like this just easily accessible, is going to really start to change the game, providing it starts to be made more of a priority.
Yeah. And I also think that like test, and don't be afraid if somebody says to you, oh, this didn't work. Most things can be changed. And as you said, we have the things where sometimes you add something that makes it inaccessible for other people, and you will always have that. I struggle I make TikToks and I text them. I have like a program that just automatic text them. And it's really, really good. And I try to make the text big because I have a lot of viewers who have problem with their vision. So I want the text to be big. But then I had some viewers who had dyslexia come to me and say, hey, sadly, due to the text being so big, it goes so fast on the screen that I can't like, I don't get the information. It goes too fast for my eyes. And somebody who has dyslexia myself, I really, really understand that. There is nothing I can do with that TikTok. TikTok is either or. There is no, well, they have started having stylized captions. So if you get captions on your TikTok, you can sometimes stylize it. That's a good thing. But then, like, I have to just say, okay, but I know more people struggle with not seeing the text. So I'm going to keep it big and then just advocate for TikTok to give us more options. But I think, and this is something a lot of devs will experience. You do something and you are so proud of it, as you should be, because you've thought about it. And then somebody says, but this is worse for me. And a good thing is that we all will experience that even I experience things like that all the time. But then you can also see, is there a way we can go around it? Like you said, with the text, with we have colors, different colors to indicate who is speaking. Is there any way you can turn that on and off in the options? Because then people can sort of design their own adventure or like design their own accessibilities. That's something you can do. And if you do that, then you're accessible for both. So there is ways around it. Don't be discouraged and just try. Have fun with it. As you said, you are a creative field. Have fun. See what other has done, see what works, and just like, yeah, have fun.
I think your point on personalization is really great. And even like I said, for someone who doesn't consider themselves to have a disability, I love having a good customization of how things show up. I prefer to read subtitles, but I don't like them to intrude on the game, but I want them to have, a black box behind them maybe. And I think that's why God of War Ragnarok did such great things in the space, because it had 70 plus different customizationable features in it. And again, not every game can do that, but the more you can let the player decide, the more they can cater to themselves, as long as you have the options available.
Yeah. And I like to say to devs that you have two ways of looking at your company. If you are from a AAA company, look at yourself as a big, big monster. You are the one that when you move, you make ripple effects and you make change. So when you do a change, you are part of making a new industry standard. When we saw The Last of Us, the good thing The Last of Us did, and then we saw, I don't know if the developers of Ragnarok then thought, well, this is possible, but we saw a lot of things that The Last of Us did for the first time, then Ragnarok also did it, which means that they have had to take the inspiration from somewhere. So we see a start of a new industry standard, especially with things like high contrast mode. But then if you are an indie company and you don't have a lot of money, you have to look at yourself as like a little mouse. You might not, if you move, you do not make ripples and big changes, but what you do is that you're quick, and you can move fast, and you're easy to reach, which means that if somebody has a problem, it's easy to talk to you, it's easy to send you a mail, and it's easy for you to fix it. Because a problem with a lot of like AAA games is that they get a mail, somebody says this is a barrier for me, and then it has to go through so many channels and decision process. Like you can't change things 2 days later. Indie games can do that. So if somebody says, "Hey, I can't read your text," I had a game where I couldn't read the text, and I sent the developer a message, and 2 days later it came a patch note with the possibility to change the text, because they could do that, because they were the only one who needed to do the decision, and they were just like, good, I know how to program this in, I'm going to just make the change. So all of us have different kind of strength in the industry. You do not need to be a big AAA, and you have a lot of power as a small indie developer as well. And I think that is important to think about. Don't like chew over too much, because it can be hard and it can be a discouraging because you aren't getting anywhere. But also understand that since you're so small, you can make quick changes and you can talk to people really easily. And if you work in a AAA, think more about it as you are able to do a change in society, a really good change that will be like a history written thing, which is cool. You're part of making a more change to a bigger picture.
Absolutely. How did you said you reached out to a specific game company about the text issue you identified. If someone else wanted to do that, how would you recommend they go about it? What sort of things did you say to them? Did you offer kind of a recommendation? How did you go about that?
So I already talked to this developer, because this developer had from the start reached out to me to play the game. So I already had a communication with them. But what I would recommend, because I have also done this before, is that you just write them a email, be nice, because nobody likes to like be nice. It's just the simple, be nice. Just if you enjoy the game, say you enjoy the game, tell them what you enjoyed about the game, because everybody likes to hear that, especially if, because there's like, it's their child, it's their little game child. Be nice. And then I said, hey, I met this barrier, and is there any way you can fix it? Then I explained why it was a barrier for me and my ideas to fix it, but not is in a way of you have to do it this way. In a, if I were to think about it, I might have done it this way. And then ended if just like hope you're doing well. And then sometimes they can do it, there is a priority, and sometimes there's not. But at least you gave them maybe a to do on their list of a lot of things to do.
Mm.
And but I think I talked to somebody else who said that uh, she enjoyed the reviews I do on YouTube because I'm being nice. And I thought about that for a second, because I was just like, well, that should be the starting point of every conversation, you're being nice. But I think a lot of the culture in the industry, not between devs themselves and like the industry people, but because the gaming industry is a harsh place, a lot of people are used to being like, people throw at them really mean things. So being nice, I think it's a really important way of being heard. Because
Mm.
if you daily hear, we have heard all of these stories, and I bet everybody listening to this have heard it, like horrendous stories of people tweeting out really horrible things and sending mails of, like, it's a game. In the end of the day, it's just a game. And then if you then are being a bit nice, you actually get heard a lot more than what you might think you'd be. Even if it is annoying, I can understand it is frustrating and annoying, like putting 9 to 10 hours into a game and then realizing, hey, I can't play it anymore because this
Mm.
puzzle. But they 99% of the time they haven't put in that puzzle to be mean to you. They have put it in and they just didn't know any better. And it's, you can then talk to them if you want to, send them a mail, be really nice about it, just explain it. If you have a print screen, or if you can record a bit showing what the problem is, that also helps. And then cross your fingers and hopefully it will be a change, make a change.
Yeah, I think you made a really good point. Like, obviously, it can be really frustrating and probably would make you pretty angry if, like you said, you really enjoying a game and then you can't get any further. But a lot of people who aren't in the industry, I don't think, are aware that some like indie games could be a team of three. Like,
Yes.
it's not a huge team with loads of resource and time. They're probably working jobs alongside that
Yeah.
because they're working to create something. But if you offer advice from a friendly point of view, people will always take it on. Like, we as an industry want to keep growing and doing better. And yeah, I think we've spoken about this a lot, but we just have to keep communicating and being open to having those conversations, even if as a dev it's like, this is more work, or this is going to take time. For the player, it's also frustrating. So like, let's just work together better.
Yeah. Be nice.
Be nice. Rule number one, be
Rule
always
number
be
one.
nice.
Be nice.
um yeah, and I wanted to, I did want to kind of talk about Starfield recently, but I don't want to go
Yeah.
into it too much just because I think a lot's been said. Steve Saylor wrote a really great piece about how Starfield left disabled players back on Earth, and I thought that was such a wonderful way to put what's happened, which is a big studio like Xbox who pride themselves on accessibility, and
Yeah.
they have been creating some great bits of tech and loads of roots in with their games. To release a game like Starfield that has just not hit the mark is, I think, very frustrating from
Yes.
people inside and out of the industry. And maybe they'll add things from now, but that's a little bit too late for me, really, to work on a game for however many years to then do it after the fact. But it's also not Xbox, it's Bethesda. So, even though they're part of the same giant company, it's maybe some values are not quite the same.
Yeah, and I saw somebody comment something that, because I agree with everything you said, and I agree what Steve Taylor said. He is wonderful. He is so knowledgeable, and I loved everything he made about it. But it's also somebody said a really good point is that Microsoft, like Bethesda and Xbox, I think they're starting to collaborate or working together. Started after the game has started being produced,
Yeah.
and again, it comes back to what I talked about earlier. Accessibility need to start on like day one, because if, like you see now with the criticism of text isn't that hard to do anything about, but design choices can be really hard. If you make assets or you do a design and then you're supposed to be able to make that design bigger for people who can't see it, that is really, really hard.
Mm.
Because if you haven't thought about that from the really, really start, then you might, it's a bit bigger task, because then you might have to redo the whole thing. It's not just like if you make it from the start, know that this needs to be sized up and down, you just do the work is done in one go. But now you have to go back, figure out how you made it again, stuff like that. And I think that is what we see now. I
Mm.
credits to them though for being quite open online, saying that please do report any accessibility problems. If you do press the report button on whichever where you play it, the
Mhm.
first thing that will come up is report a problem, and then it is accessibility, and then you can just write it down.
Right.
And they also said one report per problem. So if you have 10 problems, please, if you have the ability, write 10 reports. But yeah, it is disappointing. It is disappointing. It is, once again, we have to see that the mod community have to save the Bethesda. The mod community is amazing. A lot of the reasons why we have so much accessibility is because of the mod community of creative people
Yeah.
outside of the developer field who has figured out ideas, often due to they have a friend or family or themselves want to play a game. They can't do it. But that only work if you play it on a computer. And a lot of
Yeah.
people don't have a computer to play Starfield. So again, it isn't a fix. It isn't, it's just a bandage on a really, really big wound. And yeah, it is disappointing. And I also hope the massive critique they got now, they will take it to heart, because I have I have seen so many people wanting to rip them a new one. Like I said, be nice, but like maybe this is a way of them to understand, like, hey, the industry has changed. 5 years ago, to be honest, nobody cared. And now actually people care. So yeah, maybe this is a part of showing that we need to start caring.
Like you said
Uh
earlier, when games are doing it right, it's changing the future of games, and this is going to be the
yes.
same. Even though it didn't hit the mark, people are talking about it. People are shouting
Yes.
about it. So
Yes.
that's still going to make a change. It's just more us than them who are doing it this
Yeah.
time.
And they also, I hope, I don't think this is possible, but like if in a dreamy world of me just having all my accessibility things, I wish we would see a report of how much it will cost them to add it afterwards. I don't think in a million years we will ever see that, but that would be my dream, because
Mm.
then we can actually show like, okay, but how much would this cost if you just add it in the beginning? And it is because accessibility, the thing is that in the end, what we want is just most people play our game. That is just what we want, most people to enjoy our game, have fun with it, whatever our value for the game was, and
Mm.
sell it to most people, being absolutely basic. And it's a cost value thing, sunk cost, and all that jazz. And then it would be nice to actually have it on paper that somebody messed up and this is what they cost them. Bethesda can do that. Bethesda have the ability to show that, and then we can use that to argue more for other companies can use that to argue to their higher ups to say like, hey, we don't want to do the same that they did because this A, B, and C.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Um, and with that, I think I'll wrap up today's episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. Where can people find you to hear more about what you've got to say?
Thank you so much for having me today. You can find me under the name Arevia everywhere online. Yeah, I make YouTube content, Twitch content, and TikTok and Instagram, all about accessibility. And if anybody have any questions or like specific topics they want me to make content about, to like dive headfirst in, make understand more, they can always send me a mail at arevia@gmail.com. And then I will put it on my list and I will make content for you to learn more.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I've been your host, Roxanne Marshall, for Game Dev London. You can find us pretty much everywhere at gamedev.london. And you can find me at Xai Gaming. That's XAI Gaming. Thank you so much for listening in today. And we'll catch you on the next one.